coordinating that to avoid duplicative questions, and we'll read the questions. Tonight, we also have Jill Sanders from Cullen and Danowski, who will do her external audit report, and that will follow after the approval of the minutes. So if you'll please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Steve, would you start us off with the approval of the minutes?
Sure. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of the September 16th, 2020 regular meeting as submitted.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
We're going to move right into the external report from Jill Sanders. Good evening, Jill. It's nice to see you.
Thank you very much for inviting me this evening. I would like to make my positive report for this evening. So we did complete our audit for the year ending June 30th, 2020, and we issued our audit financial reports in draft, which I believe you have a copy of, and they are dated October 13th. And I wanted to really thank Linda Jensen for a very good job again this year with respect to instituting an internal control structure that's an effective internal control structure, especially with the COVID pandemic and the changes that had to take place to be in response to that. That took some fluidity. And so to the extent that the district did a really good job with that, you'll note within the management letter that there are no material weaknesses, there are no significant deficiencies, which means the internal controls are operating effectively, reducing to a level of low risk, material misstatement or misappropriation of assets. There are 2 comments from the previous year for which the Board of Education and the business office has already implemented changes. And I think you'll see that in the corrective action plan from the school district. One has to do with the fund balance. And this is kind of, I wanted to talk a little bit about this because, you know, that's really a challenge that the Board of Education has and all Board of Educations throughout the state. You know, what do? We had a budget. It was approved by the community and the voters back in June. And then as we send the kids back to school or the children back to school and we want to implement good practices and maintain health and safety, there's additional costs that we're encountering that hadn't been, you know, hadn't even been identified or known about back when the budget had been approved. And so to the extent that you ended the year with healthy fund balance, because the school was not really delivering educational services in the same fashion post-COVID-19, it gives you the ability to be able to now say for 2021, to the extent that we have these additional expenditures related to COVID-19 and the programs that we're trying to deliver, we have the funding available to do that. And the Board of Education did a good job with actually putting forth the resolution back in August to say, we know that these things will happen and we are designating available funding out of the unassigned fund balance to be able to take care of those expenses. So that's, you know, that's a good benefit of finishing financially in a good position at the end of the year. The larger financial document, the 60-page financial statement, is fairly set up in the same fashion as last year. There are no additional accounting policies that the school district had to implement. There are some pronouncements that will be implemented in 20 and 21, and those are identified in the disclosures. 20 has to do with the reporting for extra classroom and private purpose trust funds. It will look a little bit different in next year's financial statement. And in 2022, then you're looking at lease reporting. And so that's, you know, in the commercial world, that's also a pronouncement through FASB that has to be dealt with. In the general purpose financial statement, probably the most important part of the document is our auditor's opinion behind the table of contents. It's an unmodified opinion, so it's the highest level of assurance that you get that the financial statements fairly present the condition of the school district as of June 30th, 2020. and that's in accordance with the standards, generally accepted accounting principles in the United States of America. There are a number of standards that are used in making that determination. There's government auditing standards, there's generally accepted auditing standards, and when it comes time to do the single audit, which will be concluded by the March 31st, 2021 due date, then we apply the uniform guidance standards, which are those that are promulgated by the federal government. There's some additional disclosures in the financial statement this year, both in the management's discussion and analysis area of the document and in the footnote disclosures that talk about reconciliation of the reserves that the school district has, okay, and what has been funded during the year by board resolution and what has been appropriated through the budget process. And I think it's a good thing that you have, you know, this employee benefit accrued liability reserve is a very strong and powerful reserve to have, and you have an appropriate amount of money there. And this is the reserve that's used when it comes time to pay people for time that they've earned upon their separation from the district. And so fortunately, because you had this in place during the year 2020, you were able to, as a Board of Education, appropriate money to pay for the cost of those people who did separate. So that's, you know, a really powerful reserve to have in place. With respect to the general purpose financial statement, at the end of that document is what's known as the Yellow Book report. It's in accordance with government auditing standards. And so we're looking at internal controls over compliance, and we're also looking at controls over laws and regulations. It's a clean report. There are no findings that are noted within that document. The other three documents that we gave to the Board of Education are the extra classroom activity reports. And so, you know, just a reminder, these are really not under the control of the business office. It's a opportunity for students to experience a financial transaction. And this is a report that shows cash balances, opening cash balance by club and activity, what's been collected and what's been spent. My job, according to the State Education Department, is to audit these transactions to make sure the controls are in place, and they are in place. There's proper receipting, there's proper payment orders that are used to request funds to cover expenses that are related to each of the clubs and activities. So that appears to be working appropriately. And the report that we gave to you then shows the activity financially for the year. And as you would expect, when you look at the numbers, it's a little odd because there's about $140,000 of funding that ran through the clubs during this past year because of school closing, not being fully operational. If you had looked at the prior year's report, there's about $300,000, okay? So a full school year, that's typically what we would be expecting to see. The other two communications then are the communication to the board. If there's any difficulties in performing the audit, they would be noted in this AUC 260 document that starts off with, we have audited the financial statements. If there was non-compliance with the standards as they've been applied to the financial statements, it would be noted in this document, and there's no such items noted in the document. We were able to comply with the timetable. We appreciate Linda uploading all the documentation that we needed to audit. We tried to not be on site for obvious reasons, and so there would be documents uploaded. We would audit them. There would be additional follow-up questions and some additional documentation uploaded, and even follow-up questions. I know I had some questions for Ken, and Ken was good enough to respond to me pretty quickly on the open items that I had with respect to a questionnaire that he had completed. So considering the circumstances, I was pretty pleased with the progression of the audit during the past year. And then the last document is the management letter. So as I mentioned, no material weaknesses, no internal controls. There's a comment regarding the fund balance, unassigned fund balance, and the fact that the board adopted the resolution, okay, for allocating a portion of the unassigned fund balance for COVID-19 related expenditures. And then the computer permissions, this was better than the previous year. There's just a little bit more work as far as removing permissions from some individuals who are no longer involved in the responsibilities in those particular areas. So that's my presentation for this evening.
Joe, I just have a couple of comments or questions.
Yes.
You did not, even with the challenges that you were expected with this audit, so people understand, you're working for us, the Board of Education. You receive information from the persons in the district office, but your report is to us at different points of the year. And you did not have any difficulty, despite these challenges this last year, in developing your report that you're aware of.
No, none of our audit procedures were impaired. And as I mentioned, the documentation that we had requested, and this was a process that started back in the spring, was timely, it was complete. And if there was follow-up required, that was timely and complete also.
And this is an indication to us as a board that we have moved very well towards a digital system, that this information could be provided to you remotely through uploads and without a lot of challenge to getting them to you, correct?
That's a correct statement.
I just want to end with your comment about the balance we had to walk this year. We chose as a board unanimously to adopt a lower budget, a 1% budget instead of 2.43, as a recognition of the potential impact that the pandemic might have to our community and to employment and revenue in our community. At the same time, we have, and I've been doing it for 10 years, been developing a balance of the fund balance that we've often called the rainy day fund. Well, it rained, and we had to draw on that to immediately bring in additional staff, additional facility material, ventilation, different things like that, that was done quickly in a relatively short period of time. That was the balance you spoke of trying to get to that point, leading to the August resolution that we made a motion to transfer that money. Does anyone have any other questions on the board? With no questions presented, thank you, Jill, for your comments. Thank you to Linda and the business office for their efficiency and their compliance with these rules and the compliance with the audit. Thank you, Jill. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Moving on to the superintendent's report. Gordon? Gordon's on mute.
Sorry. Ken, are you ready?
All right.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Ken. You're on the last slide. There you go. Thank you. All right, the title of my message is Mount Sinai's Evolution and Delivery of Instruction. And I use the word evolution because, as we said back in August, the reopening is a living document, meaning it would be changed and updated. And since July and August, we certainly have changed and updated it. And this week marked more changes. Ken, please. Now, basically, three buildings are tailored. We have different approaches in the three buildings. The elementary school, we were successful in getting them back to 5 days a week, beginning this week, because there were extra rooms. We had 3 to 4 extra rooms, and we hired staff to handle remote and the extra staff we needed to support those 5 days per week for K through 6. Originally, we promoted in the original plan that would be K to 5. We're able and successfully able to get K through 6 in. Why? Again, extra room space. And if you think about it, the kids don't move. They're in one classroom. The specials come to them. They don't move to the specials. Although they do walk around the building, they get breaks, and they do go outside, and they get to use the playground. And they get mask breaks. Maybe not enough for some, but we are cognizant of it and try to give them as many as we can. So the elementary school, being in one classroom, having general practitioners, we're able to get them back. Unlike secondary in grades 7 through 12. Now, 7 through 12, we had obviously 2 cohorts. Monday and Tuesday is A. B is Thursday and Friday. Now, I would like to mention again, I mentioned it before, that the state did not approve our reopening plan. The reopening plans went to the state. They were then shared with the Department of Health, who approved or rejected your plan, and they accepted our plan with different cohorts, a hybrid schedule, and grades 7 through 12. Now, what we do is that cohort, and we have talked to the Department of Health, believes hybrid reduces the potential for disruption due to an outbreak of COVID cases. We practice social distancing. We avoid and prevent congregate settings within the middle school and the high school. And here's the main thing about the high school is so many people said, why can't we get them back 5 days a week? Simply, we don't have the space. Unlike the elementary school, our secondary kids move from class to class. They move to 8 to 9 rooms per day, to 8 or 9 teachers per day. And unlike elementary teachers, secondary teachers are certified in one subject area. They are subject specific. So if you're going to divide our classes in half and have everybody back, all 800 students, you'd have to basically double our staff. Let's look at science alone. You have living environment, earth science, you have chemistry, you have physics. Try to find extra teachers in those areas, and that's what they can teach. And also math expertise, for example. It's impossible. We had the space. We would have tried to get them back as far as we could, as soon as we could. But as you know, in 3 weeks, we'll be rotating Wednesday back in to each cohort. Every other Wednesday will be for cohort A, and cohort B will have 3 days the following week. Ken? Now, there are a lot of rumors going around, people writing me letters saying that, well, this district's doing that, this district's doing this. Why can't you do what this district does? So one weekend I spent getting in touch with a number of friends of mine and the superintendents, and I spoke to these districts: Fort Jeff, Miller Place, Rocky Point, Shoreham Wading River, Eastport, South Manor, Center Moriches, William Floyd, and so on. Now, the people who have 5 day per week in secondary throughout the schools are, I should say, Shoreham Wading River, Comstock, and 3 Village. They had the space, they had available staff. We don't simply have the space and available staff. And I also talked to them about the remote programs to see how far we were. Now, all these districts I spoke to, I must say, they are also morphing. They're also changing their plans to get better. As we go through, see how they work, we try to upgrade and get better. Ken? Now, again, talking about remote instruction, these teachers in these districts teach per period, which we were not doing, per their schedule. Half Hollow, 3 Village, Rocky Point, everything. So what we are doing, what we tried today, teachers taught per their bell schedule remotely today. And I got already received and continue about how the day was for elementary kids going 5 days a week, and for secondary being taught according to a teacher's schedule, which was successful, and people thought that was a great upgrade. I do too, and that will be happening shortly in November. You'll see in my slides. That's the way it has. There's no confusion, no lessons posted at 7 o'clock at night, and we're on it. We're teaching that way. We're getting teachers to live screen. Other districts are following our move with getting cameras in every classroom. So by the end of August, we had 160 cameras throughout our buildings. Teachers are taking advantage of them. Ken? Now, everyone was saying, why don't you mandate live streaming? It's mandated everywhere else. That's not true. I even said to 3 Village, Cheryl Pedicich, did you mandate it? And she said, no, our teachers were willing to do it. Our teachers were afraid of doing live streaming, fearful, like in many other districts around us. And I'm talking about our neighbors, not all over Suffolk County, around us, for a number of reasons. Ken? Okay, some districts are going to mandate it. They're thinking in November if more teachers don't come around. But as I pointed out in here, because we're going to teacher period-to-period schedule to remote learning, live streaming is becoming more popular. Teachers are switching over to it weekly. And I think by the end of in 3 or 4 weeks, everyone will be live streaming or teaching live, whether it's Zoom, Google Meets, or an actual live stream. Teachers are writing me and telling about the struggles they've had, and that live streaming has helped them deliver instruction more effectively remotely. I would rather not mandate it, but if it doesn't develop as fast as I like, I will mandate it. These districts told me that by November, they're going to mandate live streaming. Hopefully our teachers will do it without mandating. Top-down decisions don't always work the best. And people have some genuine fears, but to teach and deliver period by period, it works better. Okay, next slide. No, you went too far. One more thing about live streaming. Why would teachers, there are people out there writing in about live streaming. There's things that we've seen, the dangers of it, challenges. It can be recorded or manipulated. There are known cases, especially on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, where teachers' lessons live, once they leave you, they're gone. You can't edit them. They were twisted, and actually, especially on the college level, it came out pretty hideous videos of teachers' lessons because of what people did with them. The second one, splitting their attention on the both and live students. It's easier to focus on one or the other. Excuse me, I had teachers writing me today. They're managing it, but you have students live in front of you, and then you have students at home. So you have to do a balancing act, a juggling act to effectively instruct those in front of you and instruct those at home as well. And then, of course, while you're doing your live streaming, you could have possible technology glitches, the system shutting down, troubling with your equipment. But despite these challenges, more and more of our teachers are going there, and we plan on being there in November. So I'd like to leave live streaming for that for a moment. And Ken, next slide. What you have here is to support getting our kids back K-6. And we hired remote teachers again who are live streaming all day. I've watched them for 3 days now, reaching kids at home. But this is on the agenda tonight. This is how many additional staff we have hired. And you can see the areas where they've been hired in, particularly in special education, because the former remote plan did not reach those students for their IEP, okay? So hiring these teachers that just work with these kids are getting every accommodation on their IEPs. So again, you can see quite a bit of staff. That was just hiring for K-6. Next slide. Okay, the hybrid schedule we wanted to point out, again, the Department of Health approved it because it's aligned with the state education department plans with the executive orders from the government. It's aligned. We hit all the buttons. We are moving forward with further in-person instruction. Rotating the Wednesday into the cohorts will begin in 3 weeks. We postponed it because we suddenly had that spike in hybrid in the high school with the staff and students. And knock on wood, we've been not experiencing that now. We should be fine to move ahead for 3 days a week in the high school. And then again, the live streaming will be continuing and happen across the board by November. Next slide, Ken, please. Now, what we've done and what we need the community to do, and we called it a three-legged stool. There are 3 points here. We have created our facilities and procedures in place to provide a safe learning environment for our kids and staff. We've trained our staff. We enforce mask wearing, social distancing practices. Daily student admittance health questionnaires are handed in. If they're not, we take our kids' temperatures. We have desk screens. We've done many things. And we continue to discover things we can do to keep everyone staffed. Now, community responsibility. That's what we need. We'll do everything we can, but we need our parents to remain vigilant. Don't get tired of what we have to do to be safe. Practice social distancing, wear masks, and we have some holidays and seasons coming up where we have to be very careful. That we're urging you to please adhere to safety measures in the upcoming weeks. Provide a safe Halloween for your children. Be extra careful when students return home from college at Thanksgiving. A lot of parents shared that with me weeks ago when I put out that message about being careful about returning kids when the universities were closing. Avoid hosting parties for returning students, if it can be. Think carefully about attending a gym. Out of the 80 quarantined students that we have, 22 of those are cheerleaders who went to an outside gym. I got a phone call from Miller Place on Sunday. Superintendent shared that one of their cheerleaders went to the same gym and got COVID. So please be careful out there. We're trying to do everything we can inside. Ken? Now what we're trying to do is get things back to semi-normal, if that's possible. So we're talking to advisors at the high school. Peter Pramataris handed me a list of clubs that he would like to begin, and they're all going to be remote. They're all going to be virtual clubs, and he sent me all of the guidelines. We also have guidelines for athletics starting, and each coach had to fill out a guide. It had to be approved by Scott Ray and then approved by me. And before we allow this to happen. Most of these things are speed, agility, and strength, no contact. But that is what we're requesting to get us going again in the right direction with activities and some sports, okay? And this is, any staff that uses the premises has to fill out this guide. And again, we repeat, the district stands for no waivers or liability available to the public. And now I keep getting repeat questions. I can even see tonight some of these questions were answered earlier, an earlier date. But I have on the website, Ask the Superintendent, and frequently asked questions. I updated it last week. There was a while I was doing it daily, and then the questions faded away, then the questions came back. But if you go to the website, on the left, scroll down, click on more, scroll down, and you'll see this. Ask the Superintendent, frequently asked questions. A lot of the communication, a lot of the emails we get are answered on this site, frequently asked questions. So I please ask you to go there. Should you have a question, see if I've listed it here. If not, send it to me and I will post it on this location. Ken? Okay, so in summary, please, everyone be safe. They're saying we're going to face the worst 6 to 12 weeks that we have faced so far. The COVID virus is alive and well. And please keep wearing the mask, keep your kids safe, avoid social congregation, maintain social distancing. That's everything we're trying to do in the schools. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Gordon. We have a number of questions. As we see them pop up, we can see that some of them have been asked and answered in terms of Mr. Brosdale's presentation. Those subjects will move over to topics that were not covered. This is usually about 15 minutes. If we don't get to everything, we will get to it at the end. So Steve is going to assist in this in terms of the questions that were not covered in the superintendent's presentation. Steve?
Thank you. I'm going through and I've been looking at them as they're coming in, so I'm going to try. It looks like some of the questions came in before Gordon actually answered the question on this. So I'm going to try and see if we can get just those that he particularly did not necessarily answer or respond to. There was a question, it doesn't say who it's from. It says, why can't middle school and high school get desk shields to bring more students in a classroom?
So they
Well,
did,
I'm sorry, Bob.
go ahead.
We did look at that, but the problem is they change classes every period.
Right.
What we do in grades K to 6, where we have the desk shields, they are cleaned every night. Every night. Now, what do? They can't be cleaned every period when the kids change classes and they're constantly used all day. The other alternative would be for kids to carry their desk shield from period to period and bring it home nightly to clean it. We just didn't think that expectation was realistic. So we didn't. By putting desk shields, you're not getting more kids into your classroom. You still have to be 6 feet apart.
There's a number of questions that relate to this regarding desk shields. That doesn't take into account the fact that the congregate setting is, in the high school is the 7 periods that they change. We would not be able to meet the Department of Health, state ed, or executive orders with regards to that in terms of the changing in classes with almost 900 students or a little over 900 students. And the classrooms are used as far as possible as they could. As an example of that this cohort separation is working, we did have 2 incidences in the classroom. As of today, the 14-day quarantine of a large segment of our students has ended and they will be returning to class. That I'm not aware, nor is the district aware of any incident of COVID being transmitted. So the approach being taken is working, masks and social distancing in the inside to avoid and avoidance of congregate setting. Steve?
Okay, you're just coming in so fast I keep losing the spot because they're scrolling, I'm sorry. Why is live instruction not every day, just Wednesday? I know that we discussed that and it was starting today. I think that was already handled.
Well, we wanted today to get people on, get used to teaching according to their bell schedule, get kids used to teachers teaching on their bell schedule on the remote day. Because the problem a lot of teachers are having, the kids aren't going on. We have an attendance issue right now. So this is getting everyone adjusted, everyone on, and we will happen. I saw a question came up. If the live streaming did not happen from the teacher today, as it was, I made that very clear to teachers. The expectation was today, teach to your schedule. If they didn't, the parents should definitely let the teacher know or the principal know that that didn't occur today. And I would like to know about it.
Just so we can move on, we're going to, the written questions that are coming in, we can see them on the screen. Some of them are not specific to the agenda, but we will go back to them. If you'll allow us, we're going to address these topics, and then if you keep sending the questions, we're going to push them off to the end so that we can do it in a organized manner. Steve, next topics that were covered.
Next one, we have a few people have mentioned this. The one I'm reading right here is Diana Hughes asks about addressing the amount of work the kids are getting, lack of flexibility with due dates, and that the kids are working all day, all night, as well as on weekends, and then homework included.
I can say clearly, and I'll do that again for Dina, to tell the administrators, in my email said to them, flexibility is the name of the game. And I have found in many cases, teachers are being flexible, extending things, even the due date being the end of the quarter for a number of students. But I have no problem, again, telling them tomorrow, because if this was new today and more work was a result of teaching according to their schedules, then as everybody adjusts, flexibility must occur, must.
The importance of live instruction, Gordon, and reading a bunch of the questions and sort of trying to pull them all together is A lot of material is going home. I'm going to put it as quote unquote homework, that if we are doing live instruction and live interaction with the student, it will eliminate some of that. Sending home homework is not instruction, and we need
No.
to get to live instruction that is addressing the students and the students' needs, and sending home a reasonable amount of work that is supportive, that is reinforcing the work, but not taking the place of instruction. There's a number of questions, and I think a number of people have brought this up both before and during the meeting, that we have to address, that is not a replacement.
No, if I could respond, Bob, thank you. It should not be, and my hope was, as teachers teach to the bell schedule, it's like kids going to school according to their bell schedule. Teachers teach according to their bell schedule, and it shouldn't be any more work than there would be on a normal school day. It's not supposed to be that, where you constantly pile the kids up because you're on remote. It should be what you normally do, but you're teaching remote that day. I'm sorry that if that's not happening, we have to fix it.
Okay, we have
The other couple of items here.
We have one here. Christian Scott's asking about what's in place for social emotional support in the elementary school. Referencing New York State reopening plan states that social emotional learning is to be in the curriculum, particularly the trauma that the little ones are dealing with.
I totally agree with that. And that's a good question for the principal for specifics. I put out a questionnaire to the director of special education. She handles the social work and psychologist, so let me know exactly what's being done. And I think I'll answer that on my frequently asked question. But for an immediate answer for this concerned parent, call either the director of special education or the principal of the elementary school to find out what is being done. Because I have lists that indicate a lot's being done, but this parent may not feel that way, so please contact the school.
There are a number of questions about playground, elementary, recess activities, big toy, a whole number of them, if you want to address anything.
Let's deal with that, and then we'll close this session, and we'll come back to additional questions. Gordon, you had seen those questions before. Recess, activities, let's look at the larger picture of activities that are going on in both middle school and elementary school at recess, what's available, and the activity plan that the principals would have to put out for different activities that they want to do.
Well, I addressed that before as we move into activities and the sports coming back. They had to fill out the guides, tell exactly what would be done, how they do it, and how they would keep all of the guidelines in place as it happens. Watching the playground, and yes, I know the big toy issue has come up because building administrators there, as well as our facilities director, asked the question, if we're demanding and requiring kids to stay 12 feet apart in phys ed, and that's clearly in the governor's executive order, 12 feet apart. Kids who participate in bands, 12 feet apart. Kids who are in chorus, 12 feet apart. I saw it all today. That how would we then, and we have the desk shields in elementary. Kids have to wear masks. Parents want to have more mask breaks. We have everything in place. Then suddenly when recess comes, everyone can go out, everyone, and use all the equipment, go on the slides, sneeze, touch it. They felt that this is so a contradiction to what we're requiring once we're inside the building. You know, there is a plan that we could use because we want to explore it because so many parents expressed interest in this topic, that if we rotate the kids so it's somewhat controllable on big toy, they'd only get out there if you do one class at a time, about a week and a half per class before they see it again. You cannot, with all those kids, that's constantly used every period of the day. There's no time to sanitize it, no time to wash it down. That's an issue out there. But I'll tell you what I see, and the principals and the assistant principal and teachers will tell you what they see at recess. Kids are still playing and having fun and running all over. Granted, they're not on big toy, but they're everywhere else. They do play soccer without touching the ball. and they have their masks on, there are other activities out there. It's not like they're not allowed on the field, can't run, can't have fun. That's not at all. Not at all.
Well, it gets back to the district implemented what's called an activities form that is consistent across the board, whether it's a coach, club, principal, or frankly, even a teacher. It goes through the requirements as what is occurring for responsible person. This is following the Department of Health guidelines, and we're using the guidelines to develop that plan. And the elementary school principal can submit a plan as to how he would like to use Big Toy, how he would like to use other activities that once we have that outlined, we then know we can follow those guidelines and have pieces in place. All right, let's move on to the personnel matters, number 6. Pete, would you address number 6, please?
Number 6, 2020-2021 coaches. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following coaching appointments pending review and approval of strength and conditioning action plans and return to play for the 2020-21 school year. I'll list Scott Ray as the assistant coach of all sports with no compensation, and the rest I will list as listed.
Okay, Pete, that's number 6, but we'll go with that. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. All in favor?
Aye.
Indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Now you have to come back and do number 1 on the front page.
You like me, Robert, to come back to number 1?
Yes, let's do, Anne Marie, would you do number 1, please?
Okay.
Resignations. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the following resignations as listed.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, number 2, Lisa.
Substitute teachers, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following substitute teacher appointments based on the agreement with the Teachers Association dated August 26, 2020, as listed.
Thank you. May we have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor indicate aye. Aye. Rob, number 3.
Substitute teacher. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments. Brennan Stovic, 9/21/20, substitute teacher, $111 a day to $175 a day after 10/7/20. Conrad Bernatsky, 10/16/20 start date, substitute teacher, $175 a day.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. All in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Lisa, number 4.
School district aides, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments. Allison Cardone, appointment date 10/13/20, school district aide, compensation step 1. Danielle Gordon, 10/13/20, school district aide, step 1. Stephanie Sprague, September 1st, 2020, school district aide, who I guess she was a former sub-aide. Compensation is step 1. And Stephanie Rink, September 30th, 2020, another former aide who's a substitute aide.
May I have a second, please?
Compensation
I
is.
second.
Thank you. All in favor indicate aye.
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 Ed, number 5, substitute custodians.
Substitute custodians, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments for Richard Miller and Cody Summer, both for October 22nd of 2020 as substitute custodians at $14.75 an hour.
May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Rob. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Indicate aye. Thank you. We'll skip over 6. We did 6 already. 7, clubs and activities. Pete?
Number 7, clubs advisors, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent. The Board of Education hereby authorizes the following co-curricular clubs and appoints the persons listed below as advisors for the 2020-21 school year as listed.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Indicate aye. Aye. Action items, educational. Lisa, A, Committee on Special Education.
Committee on Special Education, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations and approves the authorization for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such as listed below.
May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Rob. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ed, action items, external audit report.
External audit report, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the independent audit report of the general purpose financial statements, including the reports on compliance and internal control, and the audit of the extra classroom activity fund as submitted by the firm of Cullen and Danowski, LLP, for the school year July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, and further accepts the corrective action plan as submitted by the Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Thank you, Ed. May I have a second?
I second.
Any comments? We've gone through the report. All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Rob, obsolete equipment.
Obsolete equipment, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby declares the following items as obsolete and further authorizes disposal as listed.
May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
Steve, would you do C, per diem teacher pay?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby increases the rate of pay for per diem substitute teachers to $175 per day, effective October 7th, 2020, and through the conclusion of the 2020-21 school year only.
Thank you,
Second.
Steve.
I second.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor indicate aye. Aye.
Aye.
D, Lisa, district-wide school safety plan.
Sure. District-wide school safety plan, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby adopts the amended district-wide school safety plan that is posted on the district's website for a public review and comment.
May I have a second?
I
I'll
second.
that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And finally, retirement for Ken Jockers. Once again, we're pushing that off, thank God. Ed?
Retirement for Kenneth Jockers, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby amends the retirement date for Kenneth Jockers, Network and Systems Coordinator, to be effective January 1st, 2021. Further, Mr. Jockers shall receive all benefits associated with the Memorandum of Agreement between the Board and Administrators Association dated April 17th of 2019.
May I have a second?
I second.
Any comments? All in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
All right. Steve, there's a number of comments and questions. Some of this has become just a chat room of indicating opinion. can you weed through that with regards to the questions so that we can address questions as we move on? What are the questions that keeps coming up is we are utilizing a written question procedure and not a public forum. This is an open meeting, not a public forum. Steve?
Yeah, I'm working on that. We have about 7 pages of questions, so I'm just trying to go through and figure out what we have looked at and what we have not. Going back to where we began earlier, we talked about the 5 days instruction. A lot of people have been asking for a full year school calendar. Specifically, they're asking for planning for teacher conference days. 1 month at a time isn't helping with planning. I don't know if that's an option, it's a possibility, but I've seen that multiple times here.
I think it would be helpful to the parents as far ahead as we can go. Please keep in mind that some of this is not occurring because of fluid plans, but if we could have more than a month to month, that would be great.
We'll work on that. I'll speak to Maureen and Chris about that tomorrow, see what we can do.
We've had a few people ask questions about looking into an app. The first person asked about Laura DeMarco. Can we look into an app like Parent Square for health screenings, indicating tags aren't staying on the elementary kids' bags? And a few other people also asked about the apps.
Did any of them say, Steve, that they have knowledge about it? Or if there's an elementary app, can they write Rob Catlin, the principal, about it?
This particular one that mentioned was Parent Square. I'm not really sure if there are others, but they're all saying an app would be good.
All right, I'll look into that and I'll speak to Rob Catlin about it.
The question here, I'm going at the other end, why were so many high school students quarantined? The Department of Health defines that.
We have asking about Chromebooks and also textbooks, seeing if there's any opportunity for textbooks to be digital. A few different people talked about heavy backpacks, amount of books being carried, and if there's been any exploration into digital books or other ways to have lighter bags.
Over the last few years, we've made an effort to have everything available at home digital. My son's backpack is pretty heavy too, and I'm going to find out what books can be taken out of that backpack, especially if you add lunches and other things to it, it gets to be very heavy. But we have moved towards that. You might call the principal of that building. And I know in social studies, we went digital, and math, we went digital. So please check with the school to see if you're able to access it at home so they don't have to carry that book.
I've seen a lot of the similar questions. I'm going to kind of paraphrase this one together. And I think Bob and Gordon, but you can both elaborate. Maybe we've discussed this about the sports. People are asking how we can have sports, but gym class can only walk the track. I know you mentioned earlier about the plan. Mm-hmm. Maybe that'll make it a little easier to answer based on that.
Yeah, I addressed the board about it today. I've been speaking to Scott Ray about it. Moving away, many parents have written me about that. I think people are getting tired. We have to move, but we have to move slowly. So I asked him today for a detailed plan. What activities are you going to use and implement on the grades so we're not just walking the track? What else can we do in phys ed safely and get those activities going? So he was directed today to do a guide, as Bob was speaking about before, so we can get these things going.
There were a couple of other questions that I saw that one was free lunches, the free lunch program. We talked about the calendar.
Regents? People are asking about regents.
And the regents. We have absolutely no information on the regents at this point.
No, we do. They number one.
No, I mean we don't.
No, but they did send dates. The state did send dates. Now they're meeting to see how flexible, there's that word again, they're going to be with regents exams. I would, if we stay with all these distancing rules and God forbid we don't close, you may see regents, but I don't know what, I don't think we're going to see them waived like they all were last year. I don't think you're going to see it. There's a lot of schools are back hybrid or full time. So I think the regents are going to happen. I'll wait for more news and I'll put it out to the district.
Just to go through, there's a lot of good ideas with regards to activities for any of the students, that really we should be looking how we can expand. The shared items and shared equipment is the issue, even with our intramural sports. But there are ways to get through that. If we can address that in the phys ed department, they have to come up with ways, both while we still have some outside weather and inside weather, of different things that we can do.
And to add to that, Bob, I'm seeing questions come through regarding when are these sports going to begin, or middle school. That they have to be directed at the athletic director, Scott Ray.
Multiple people have been asking about our board meetings and if and when they'll be able to go back to live again.
We are utilizing the executive orders that allows for remote meetings, and we'll continue to do so long as we have that and it is safe to do so. And that's how we're guided. There was another question earlier on that I thought, that why can't teachers go from classroom to classroom?
Yep.
That was a topic that was discussed in May when we started putting plans together, and that topic addressed how could we accommodate changing teachers as opposed to changing students as an option. We also talked about how we could do different scenarios. Because of the scheduling, the mix of students, kids go from ninth grade to 12th grade. There are intermixing of subjects. According to the principal guidance and scheduling, it could not be done with any degree of consistency.
Especially science needs labs, the equipment in the room also is a determination.
It's 9 o'clock.
I've seen a number of people talking about connectivity issues with the live streaming, I guess probably today, where they have high speed at home and they're having issues seeing at school. Has there been any upgrades or planned updates to the bandwidth at the district?
Ken, if you're there, you want to jump on that?
If I'm not muted at this time, and I don't think I am, we don't see any issues with the bandwidth. We have 250 meg currently. I have an anticipation of more streaming. I have reached out to both of our ISPs, and with basically a phone call, an email signature, we can double the bandwidth. But I am looking at that, and we don't see any issues right now.
There have been a number of questions very specific to special ed. I think those should be addressed outside of this forum, but I would like everybody to know that all the questions in this chat I'm copying into a document that I will send over to the superintendent for him to look at as well. So if your question wasn't necessarily read live, they're not being ignored, they're not being deleted, they are being sent up, and I'm sure, as we've seen Gordon doing, he is doing frequently asked questions, so he can utilize those and put them into the information out to everybody.
And I'm taking notes, but Steve, it helps if they have special ed. I would have to go to the director of special education anyway. They might save some time to go to the person specifically, that administrator, whether it's the principal or the director, they'll get their answer faster. I'll have to get those questions and go to them, especially with an area of special education. It's probably more urgent, and they should deal with them directly.
A few people have asked about mask breaks, if there's a policy or a specific amount of mask breaks that is supposed to be given. Some people are saying there aren't enough, that their kids are saying they aren't having them.
Well, I'm not in that building. My order was to give mask breaks. The principal and the teachers determine how many. And even more than the principal, the teacher knows how many. So I'm assuming some of these parents have addressed that concern to the teacher, and they should, if they don't feel they're getting enough.
Yeah, multiple people are chiming in on that one as well.
Right, I see that.
Yep, and a lot of people are also asking about tests in person while they're on their only days that the kids are in high school.
There's a number of comments about the mask. Let's just get back to the science. Mask prevents the transmission of COVID. That's all there is to it. It's the science of what that's about, particularly in a congregate setting.
Okay,
If
special.
if you didn't wear masks, you'd be violating the Department of Health and the governor's executive orders if you didn't have kids wear masks.
Good. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
May I have a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Indicate aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.